series is from Psalm 13. I'd like to read along. How long, O Lord, will you forget me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death, and my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in all your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. May God add blessing and understanding to the hearing of this word this day. We are doing this sermon series on Psalms because we're trying to get an understanding of the breadth of what is in the Bible, of what we can bring to God. We will hear words in a week that are more wisdom-like, bringing some knowledge to us, imparting to us ways to continue to stay and remain faithful. We will have Psalm of celebration. Today we have Psalm of lament. Psalm of lament. A being, if you will, naked before God. Your soul bared to say, I can't do this by myself, God. I've been pushing and pushing and pushing, but I seem like I'm the only one doing the pushing. Where are you, God? I don't feel you in my life. I think I need you. We've been there. Ever had a broken relationship that hit you to the core? Ever lose a job? Fail a test? Distance between you and a parent or you and a child? Things that are heaped on your shoulders through no action of your own? Making poor decisions? In the Bible, lament means feeling as if you're separated by God. Lament means having no interaction that feels positive with the one who's supposed to be leading you. You see, in the Bible, lament is either communal for the nation of Israel or individual for the person. With the nation of Israel, it's a little easier to understand. Somewhere along the way, there's been broken covenant. There was a covenant between God and the people. The people were supposed to act as if God was their God, and God would then always take care of them. But sometimes they broke the covenant, and when they did, they thought that God's back was turned on them, that they were alone. And so, during years of captivity where their leaders were taken away and their land was ruled by another country, they thought they were all alone, that God had forgotten them, that God was no longer on their side. When you've broken covenant, when you deserve not to have a relationship, it's a little easier. Well, maybe it's not. But the same that would be true for a nation would be true for an individual. An individual who has this relationship with God and no longer does. Well, there's nothing that feels more isolating. There's nothing that feels worse than that. Judy Blume. This is going to be more relational to women, I think, than men. She wrote a book, and it's been a bestseller for a long time. Are you there, God? It's me. Margaret. It's about a young woman who is struggling to figure out her life as a teenager, trying to figure out boys and being a girl and what all of that means, and yet central to the book is the fact that she's been raised in a home where the father is Jewish and the mother is Christian. There's a lot of pressure heaped upon Margaret by her grandparents. The Christian grandparents can hardly believe this marriage and almost denounce it and try very hard for Margaret to know her Christian heritage. Her Jewish grandmother is more accepting of the relationship, more accepting of the marriage, but also introduces Margaret to the ways of being Jewish and calls her her little Jewish granddaughter. And Margaret is kind of caught in the middle, being raised both Jewish and Christian, and trying to figure out this God thing, and trying to figure out who this God person is, and how she is supposed to relate to this God. And so her first prayer is, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret." But couldn't that be any of us? In the trials and tribulations of life, couldn't that be any of us? "Are you there, God? It's me." This psalm asks the same question, doesn't it? Asks the same question. "Are you there, God?" In fact, asks it in much stronger language, actually. If we look at the psalm, verses 1 and 2 are kind of set aside. We get two things that happen in verses 1 and 2. We get the fact that there are going to be three characters in this psalm. There's the psalmist, the writer, the author, the speaker of these words. There is God, and there is the enemy. These three characters are going to play out in the course of this psalm. And in this psalm, the psalmist, the writer, the speaker says, "Are you there?" Well, kind of. Kind of. As the questions go on, it becomes more of a question and more of an accusation. "Are you there? Okay, you're not there because you have decided to turn your back on me. You're doing this, God. Why are you doing this to me?" So as the questions go on, they rise in intensity and eventually point a finger. "You're doing this to me, and my enemies are going to be exalted over me. Where are you, O God? Why have you forsaken me?" Have we heard those words before? Not the words of the psalmist, but the words of Jesus on the cross. "Why have you forsaken me? Where are you?" Verses 3 and 4 are petition, are asking. They clarify exactly what the psalmist needs or wants. "God, you've hidden your face from me. I'm in circumstances that are bad, and you don't seem to be doing anything about it. But I need you to. I need you to be there for me, God. Provide something relevant. Make some sense of this situation." Actually, in verses 1 and 2, there's a word that's used there for sorrow. For sorrow. We think of it as sorrow, but if you look at the history of that word in the Hebrew Scriptures, it's used to represent death. So the situation that the psalmist finds himself or herself in is a life and death situation. And so when the psalmist says, be there for me, save my life. I'm coming to you. I've exhausted everything else I have. I come to you, save my life. And then at the end, verses 5 and 6, well, biblical lament is just not biblical lament if it doesn't have hope. Biblical lament never goes so far as to say, God, you've actually turned your back on me forever, and therefore I'm going to turn my back on you. Biblical lament says, "Oh God, I bare my soul before you. I tell you exactly how I'm feeling. I am not good in this moment. My life is in danger. And yet in you I will put my trust. In you I will find my hope. Because in the past, God, you have dealt bountifully with me. You have dealt well with me. You have been good to me in the past. And so, I will trust that in this difficult situation where my life is in danger, you will be good to me again." I think that's probably where we fall down. Is that when life seems hopeless, we think that life is hopeless. That there can be nothing good. But if we follow the form of lament, we continue to think, when there is no hope, there is at least God. When I'm all alone, there is at least God. When I've made the poor decisions and I can't love myself, well, at least there is God. When everyone else seems to have turned their back on me and they can't love me, at least there is God. This is lament. Do you know it? Have you been there? Does your soul stir to even think about these words today? I know you've been there. I know that I've been there. And it's good. It is so good to be able to say to God exactly what is on your heart, because God already knows. God already knows. It helps you to begin to cleanse your system. It helps you to begin to move towards health. When you've reached rock bottom, you make the first step up. I had a friend in seminary. His name was Ron, and he served the Methodist Church one town over from mine. He was dating a woman from our seminary. We were all in seminary together. I had just finished seminary, so I was a full-fledged minister. I was working at Danville Christian Church in Danville, Indiana. In the middle of that first semester of being fully ordained, I had actually worked there as an intern before. Thought it would be a really good idea to have an overnight and then go to worship. We had a balcony. In fact, if we took pictures of the church in Danville and took pictures of this church, you would think they were exactly the same church. A dome, slanted floor, small chancel, a space for the choir off to the right. I mean, identical. So as I'm sitting up on the chancel and all of my youth are sleeping in the balcony, we get to the time of communion, and my minister's name was A.W. A.W. is sitting off to my left, and there's this loud bzzz, 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 and it stopped. And then 30 seconds later, it began again. Bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. It's good that the college students left because they don't know what pagers are anyway. But I see A.W. walking across the front of the communion table looking at his pager. I had never seen him use that before. Never even knew that he had it. And it was a pager that he got from the county because he was a chaplain. He runs back in and he says, "Kelly is going to run the rest of the service. A minister has been shot, and I need to go and be with the congregation." He didn't say it. He said, "The Methodist minister in has been shot." Now realize, I've had no sleep. So my mind isn't thinking very well. I thought that AW was running to the hospital. And when he said a Methodist minister has been shot, I knew exactly who he was talking about. He was talking about my friend who I sat in class with. He was talking about my friend who had been the slow-pitch softball pitcher for my team. He had been a man whom I had confided in. He was my friend. So I went to the hospital after worship, thinking that's where AW was. But AW was with the congregation a town away, and the chaplain of the hospital didn't work on Sundays. He was the only minister around. 2 members of his congregation and his 13-year-old daughter were sitting in a waiting room, and they asked me to be with them. Can you imagine being a 13-year-old girl and seeing that? You see, what had happened was that an old girlfriend who wasn't in the correct state of mind was frustrated that they were no longer dating, and she came into the congregation. And I won't give you all the details. They're not necessarily gory or anything. I just don't want to make the story longer than it needs to be. But in the front of the sanctuary, as he was closing out the service, she pulled out a gun. Can you imagine being church members who witnessed that? How long, oh God, will you forget? How long, oh God, will you turn your face from me? After everything that happened at the hospital, sitting with the church members and the daughter, they asked me to run to Ron's house because the woman that he was dating, Julie, was coming out to his house that afternoon. They were going to go do some shopping. They were going to hang out. And they knew that she would be there and she would be all alone, and so they asked me if I would go and be with her. Can you imagine being the significant other, expecting to have a glorious day, and getting the news? How long, oh God, will you forget about me? This young woman, I'm not sure she'd ever had a boyfriend before. She was a bit mousy, a bit shy, a bit reserved. I so worried about her. I didn't know if she would ever recover from hearing about Ron's death. Difficult things always take time to get over. But she healed beautifully and found a strength that she never knew she had. Down the road, she gained some confidence. And although I'm sure she thinks about Ron, she's moved on with her life. I can't say I know exactly what's going on with her now. But what I do know is that things were horrible. And yet things got better. She felt as if she was all alone in this world. And yet now, through her own relationships and her own church. She has community. We go to the depths. And as we pull ourselves, we're not actually doing the stepping. That we're not actually doing the pull. That our ever-present, ever-loving God is standing right beside us. And even though we may have yelled, "Oh God, how long will you forget? Why have you turned your back on me?" We realize God was never far away. We realize that God was with us every step, in every moment. And we give thanks. If we are true lamenters, if we're following the biblical script of lament, we will yell and scream, we will whine and complain, we will moan and groan, we will feel deeply. We will ask for what we need, and we will celebrate that the God who loves you, and you, and you, and me, is always there. In our most difficult times, may it be that we can put our hope and our trust in the one who is trustworthy, and the one who is hope, the one who is love. There's a quote from that Judy Blume book. "Hello, God, are you there? It's me, Margaret. I know you're there because you would have never wanted to have missed this. Thanks." God will not miss a moment of your life, my friends. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, apathetic, sinful, chaotic, crazy, peaceful, calm, good. God is there. Truly something to say thanks for. Amen.